All right, I'm going to hit the go live button. Welcome and good evening to Adventures in DeFi Kingdoms. This is Raph streaming to you live high above the keep in the hot air balloon. Tonight, as always, Neindorf, how you doing?
Doing well. It's been a while, but I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, I had to shake the rust off the microphone tonight. It's been far too long, but it's nice to be back in the saddle. And a very special guest tonight, Hubert. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, and happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on the podcast for the first time, and we've connected a couple times over voice chat. But it was great meeting you when I was out in Minneapolis, you and your wife, at dinner. So yeah, I'm excited to sit down and have some more in-depth nerdy conversations with you again.
Yeah, it was good to meet you as well, and yeah, I guess this time now we're doing it with an audience, so a new
Yeah,
a new format for us.
there you go. Yeah, so let's catch up a little bit. I'll give the people what they want. They ask for house project information on the Raph house projects. I've been rebuilding a railing on the back of my deck that is falling apart. So that's I'm trying to spend part of my time there, part of my time keeping my kids on the deck. And just have a whole bunch of other house projects going on now that the summer started. It's nice to be outside though. Neindorf, how about you?
Yeah, uh, I've been full on yard work mode, I feel like lately with this nice weather we've been having. Oh, I tell you what.
Yeah, I had to turn the sprinkler on this week though. It's getting a little dry out there.
Yeah, I hear you. That happens quick. Where I live, it's all clay, so man, I tell you what, it dries up right away.
Yeah. How about you, Hubert? Any projects or interests outside of DFK? I mean, I know you guys just pushed a massive batch, so I can't imagine you had much time for anything else.
Yeah, I struggle just to keep my long mode and keep the weeds away. That's about as far as I have been managing to keep things going. But I definitely have things that should be projects that I just haven't gotten to yet. Like you mentioned your deck, I also have my deck is kind of old, and there's now a piece of wood that's falling apart, and it's like, oh no. So projects, homes never seem to like stop having things you need to do for them. So.
No, so much work. I'm lucky that my boss at work, he's a woodworker, and one day I was asking him for his advice on doing the deck a certain way, and he's like, "No, I would do the cut this way." And I like always way overcomplicate things, and that's one of my favorite things about woodworking projects, or any kind of like construction projects, is there's always a more efficient and easier way to do it, and there's a smarter person out there who's done it before. So that's well, if you have any questions, I can probably tell you what not to do. I'm finding the many ways to not build a light bulb.
Nice. I will keep that in mind.
All right. Well, I'll try to pay attention to YouTube chat, but I mean, let's stop teasing around here. We got a lot of exciting new things with the Giga patch. I guess first maybe Neindorf. What's your favorite feature of the Giga patch?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of, you got a mix of quality of life, new pet types, you've got new levels of questing. Honestly, it's a hard answer. There's so many good features. I think I'm really kind of leaning towards that actual first, well, I guess not the first duals utility for pets was there slightly before, part of the patch though. But I think seeing those pets apply and like how the management of that with the hero together, I think that's really cool. So I think the cool factor alone of applying a pet and utilizing that for quest bonuses has to be at the top.
We are way too much alike. Quality of life, as I'm clicking to mass batch all of my 67 green eggs that I have stored up, waiting for tonight. But really, it comes down to the actual equipping of a pet onto the hero card. Like seeing that start to come to life is really exciting. Hubert, do you have anything that's a certain feature that's sticking out to you?
I think I'm with you guys. It was getting the whole UI and user experience set up for being able to handle pets and handle other equipment was a pretty good chunk of work for us. We wanted to make sure that the user experience was as seamless as we can with, it is increasing complication where you're now needing to connect things and we're always looking to improve that, but at the same time, we're also adding new things too. So, it's kind of a balance of, all right, this is adding new complexity, but how can we do it in the best way that's the most easy to understand? And I think we did a pretty good job. There's likely a few things that we can improve upon as we move forward, but we definitely did build it like with other equipment in mind as well. So once we do get to that point, it's not going to be as much work to implement. I mean, we'd have to like make the new equipment contracts and whatnot, but for me, it like opened up a whole big new avenue of possibilities for us. So that was really great. Also seeing the bonuses being applied and everything, that was pretty complicated to make that all work in as efficient way as possible as we could think of. And even with that, I think there's a few things people might have noticed. Like it did add extra logic, so that added like gas cost and whatnot. But I guess that's kind of a consequence of the increased complexity. But yeah, so I'm very happy that we have finally gotten to this point. It has kind of opened up the door for us to move past it. I know it's something that we've been talking about for quite a long time. There were a lot of events that occurred, last year that kind of led us around on a pretty long detour. So I'm happy to kind of be back on track with, pushing forward all the game content. So I think that's probably the biggest thing for me overall is just being able to move forward and showing that to the community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Could you open up the hero equipment? Just pull up a hero and open the equipment tab up real quick. when I first saw this, I was like, it brought me back a bunch of nostalgia from like Knights of the Old Republic, and I was like, uh, where's the implant slot where you put the brain implant in? I was like, oh wait, this is the wrong genre here.
Right. Yeah. There.
I
We.
love the system though, but the look of this is like very nostalgic. I love it.
Right. Yeah, we didn't go too hardcore on the number of different things you can equip, but it definitely was a discussion of like, do we want to go more than just armor? Do we need boots? Do we need gloves
Hmm.
and all these other things? But we kind of opted to, keep it as functional as we could, so it will be easier to balance, and we can, be able to get content out more quickly. So,
So we're
um,
gonna get to crafting. So we might as well just segue into it now. I'm gonna throw the agenda out the window. To hell with that. Um, so with crafting, obviously that will lead to the equipment that's here on a hero. One of the big questions that I have is, you know, is there a kind of crafting that favors a piece of equipment, or does crafting favor, a subcomponent of a piece of equipment that will eventually become a sword? And so, your blacksmithing could be used to create swords or armor.
uh, yeah, our goal with crafting is to make it very interconnected between the different crafts. So, while a sword might be a smithing uh, like recipe in the end, some of the components to that might not be smithing. Like you may have a gemstone or something that comes from goldsmithing. There might be leather for the pommel that comes from the leatherworking,
Hmm.
and that sort of thing. So and that's just for swords, right? Whereas like a bow would be woodworking, and other things like staves and other weapons would kind of come from a different category of crafting. So we hope to have a pretty interconnected system like that.
I love that, and I love the as interconnected as it is. It's also, it's starting to have heroes provide a lot of value in unique ways. Before you jumped on, when Neindorf and I were doing our pre-show meeting, he was talking to me about the alerts that he set up. Well, Neindorf, why don't you talk about it, instead of me trying to regurgitate what you said?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean there's different concepts of, what makes a good hero. And as you guys continue to push out more and more features, to the community, what a good hero is kind of changed. Now we've got more to consider. Crafting might still be a little ways out, but at least now that we know what it is and we know what genes a hero has, we can start planning for it. And so it's kind of like the strategy is, well, let's get some alerts out there on the site so that when heroes come up for sale, that's got, say, it's a good tailor, and I look at my hero stable and I see that I actually don't have any good tailors. That then I can start to kind of fill in gaps in what I'm holding. And so I think, trying to, and then upgrade the quality of heroes too, in a sense. Like maybe I got this crafting covered by a common hero, but maybe I want to try to find a rare replacement for it. So it's just kind of that kind of, creating heroes, if you will, for utility.
Right. Yeah, and you might have noticed that with the crafting, like the stats that impact crafting, they're all different,
I love that, by the way.
compared to Profession Quest as well. So definitely trying to make your choices a little, you have a lot to think about. There's also combat as well, and you might not, maybe a crafting hero might not be the best hero for combat because of how you've leveled them up, but that was part of the goal with this, is to be able to have specialties, or let people specialize, and whatever it is that they like doing in the game, to give them options of how they want to play.
I love that. All right, well, let me pull up my notes, and I'll try to pull us back onto the original track. And one thing that you talked about with on Sargent's Cantor Gander podcast last week with um, Franz, and with Maddie, and with Christian Peters, and obviously Sargent, was the hero summoning. And so that's not something that we want to like rehash or spend a lot of time here. I think we have some ideas of like how I want to tie to some of the conversations that we had at that last podcast once we get into some of the travel mechanics. But intentionally, I just want our YouTube listeners out there to know that we're going to try to, let that conversation exist in that last podcast and not try to rehash that for the sake of everyone.
Okay.
So one thing that I want to talk about first is, how do you think about the concept of attracting new players with game design? And are there elements of game design that you think about that would bring more people into this space? When I think about the recent marketing event, really exciting, generating a lot of fun. I can't tell yet if it's just within the DFK Twitter sphere or if it's starting to permeate into the rest of crypto and Twitter and GameFi space. So what are some of your thoughts on how does game design impact new players?
Um, yeah, so I think gameplay is probably the thing that people are most interested when they're looking at traditional gaming. If you hear a game's not very fun, then you're probably not going to play it unless there's like something really compelling about it, like the theme or whatever. So as I think that's always going to be an important thing here with our game is we do want to make it fun and have a lot of different content for people of different preferences, where there may be people that do like to just craft or gather and kind of participate in the economy that way. I think the majority of players will probably be most interested in going out and doing combat-related quests and exploration and that sort of thing, participating in dungeons and things that don't exist in the game yet at this moment, but that are on our roadmap. So I think if you can make a fun gameplay experience, people will come and play it. And then when it comes to with DFK, it's also on a blockchain, so that does change things as well, and it kind of has with blockchain comes a whole different audience. So I think there's also people that are kind of interested in just the economy by itself and seeing how gameplay and different aspects of the game can be, I guess, used for potentially making good choices on how you allocate your resources. I don't know. I got to be careful with the words that I use there, but
Right.
so there's different aspects to it. As far as for me for me, I'm mostly focused on the game design side of things. I do also contribute to discussions about just overall tokenomics and whatnot as well. But my main focus is on getting us to a point where we have a fun, compelling gameplay experience for people.
If anyone's making financial decisions based on this podcast, you've been sorely
Yes,
misled by
disclaimer.
us for many years. So, that's you're good there. But I understand the sensitivity to that. But I think that's what kind of, while a sensitive topic, I think it is certainly an allure to the crypto or the Web3 gamer or the crypto investor is that these are assets that carry value that are tied to something that you can do with them, that's a little more of a actual economic token than something that you've seen in conventional games. Like value existed in World of Warcraft or some of the Final Fantasy MMOs, where you would have people actually selling their accounts that they would level up, but the market for that was very, it had a lot of friction to it. And so building a
Right.
game inside this that is exciting. That's really groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's kind of embraced when it's on the blockchain.
Hmm.
So yeah, definitely it's a different experience for sure because of that, and it does kind of complicate a lot of what we do because of it, but it also makes it a fun challenge to solve for it. So yeah.
Yeah, so Hubert, you brought up like this kind of the idea of, different roles or these traditional fantasy tropes existing, and not fantasy tropes, more like gaming tropes that exist in the game. Neindorf, I know this is something that, you've been preaching about or talking about for a really long time. you're excited to see some of these roles develop where, a person could be a gardener where they're focusing on the LPs, or they could be a supplier of materials, or they could be a fighter, they could be a landowner. You've talked about that forever. Like, what do you hear when Hubert's talking about kind of these different roles existing?
Yeah, I think you have to have that to attract a sizable, meaningful player base, honestly, because nobody's, no two people in this world are alike. So that you're going to find interest in very different aspects. And if market analysis is something I'm really interested in, well, go to the market page and study the numbers and watch the trends. I was chatting with you a little bit before this, and I was noticing that these level 10 profession quests happen to give out a lot more XP. I was like, well, maybe moksha runes are on the up and up. I don't know. We're gonna have a lot of people getting through these levels faster than they have traditionally. A lot of our heroes have stalled out at like 13 because the XP is just huge. Well, it's not huge anymore. So, that's a whole game to play. And you don't even need to own a hero if you want to play that particular game. Or, you can hatch 67 eggs. There's just I love that idea that there is a game within the game for everybody's play style.
Yeah, that's if I can get my MetaMask to pop up. So I'll try to be the egg catcher. But all joking aside, with the egg catching, I mean that's been like something that the Mythic Squad's been doing a lot. Is spinning eggs and playing the odds, hatching them, selling the valuable ones, and continuing to push the ecosystem forward. So it's exciting. I think we're seeing it develop already, and we're only in our infancy stages. There's so much more to develop. Are there any other roles that you anticipate showing up, Hubert? That we're not expecting right now? Or are you surprised, or like, are there roles from like other games? I know you've done, I believe it was Final Fantasy, the MMO. Um, any like parallels that you would draw from games like that you would see in kind of roles and how the game you're developing could take form?
Let's see. So yeah, I do think, looking at a traditional MMO is kind of a good example of at least the type of experience we're going for. Like if I use Final Fantasy 14, which is the most recent MMO I've played, as an example, with their crafting system, they have a very in-depth system, and you could be somebody that goes and actually gathers all the resources, uses them to craft, or you can just participate in the market, see what's in demand at the moment, and try to target specific things, and just get the resources you need off the marketplace as well. So I think in those games as well, you can kind of fill this same kind of role as like a supplier of the market without necessarily needing to do too much gameplay. Though with that, it all kind of comes hand in hand. Like you're not going to be able to uh, gather the best resources until you've progressed with like your main combat stuff. But I guess anything that would be outside of those roles that you kind of see in an MMO that may be different here. I think other than what Neindorf said, as far as just somebody who's watching the market and not really participating in like using heroes or anything. There's also like landowners eventually will have their own kind of place in the game as well, and where they are kind of given keys to provide functionality to other players to utilize. So um, I think that's something where I don't think I've really seen that much of that sort of thing in um, other MMOs where landowners actually building different buildings that provide services for players to use. Like if you need to craft with do some smithing, you need to go find a land that has like smithing buildings that you can utilize. So landowners kind of have their own kind of real estate uh, businesses kind of set up as well. I don't know if business is the right kind of word to use here, but um, just they are going to be very active participants in just the whole ecosystem once we get to that point where it's all released, which is
All right.
still a ways out. So
There's a
I gotta
really
ask now.
handsome
He's
plot of
pulling.
land up here that I have pulled
Yeah,
up.
yeah, he's pulling our land up. What? Just give us a guess. What's our land gonna have on it? I know it's completely conjecture and absolutely meaningless, but what do you envision this land plot having on it?
Are you
um, oh, go ahead.
no, you go for it.
Uh, yeah, so I do need to be, I guess, a little cautious about saying too much because our land is a little bit further down on the timeline as far as what we're focusing on. We do have like travel and combat that we want to get out first before we really dive too deep into lands. Especially travel, it's not gonna, it won't really work without travel in place. But with that said, so I mean, I've already mentioned different crafting buildings. I guess the general approach that I have for lands is I want to give landowners enough choices that are kind of may not necessarily be permanent, but like they're kind of take a good amount of effort to go away from or like undo. That no two lands necessarily need to be the same, and they can have different services available, or they kind of specialize in specific things, and the players can then look and see, okay, this. So maybe you guys will be hard on smithing, for example, and it's like, okay, well, maybe all the people go to Alvaran to smith, or and then the other lands nearby might be like, okay, well, they're already doing smithing, so we're gonna do leatherworking or whatever. So I guess that's one kind of small example. We do have plans for other types of buildings and other things that can be built within the land, and also kind of have plans for those buildings themselves to be upgradable as well. So kind of having a whole, a city building, little mini city builder aspect tied to it, but all with kind of the emphasis on providing services or benefits to players in some way that also benefits the landowner when the players are utilizing them.
All right, so I
And
got
it
a new
sounds like you.
project idea, Neindorf. Full Sim City like sim. Game that we
Ooh.
develop, on lands where it's medieval style. You gotta have the pixelated graphics going for it, but there we go. Next project.
Is there a hot air balloon landing pad building, perhaps?
Who knows? There might be.
Yeah. So this
Uh,
mechanic that you're talking about, where you're kind of limiting construction of a certain resource to land, I love that, and you also used a word choice that I want to bring up as a bit of a theme that I'm sensing when we talk about travel, land, crafting. And that's exciting, of giving choice to the player. So kudos to you on building that into the game design. And this choice being, I think this is a great way to create healthy diversification. And so one whale just can't go and create all the best resources. I mean, I think it has to be somewhat associated with what you can fund on a piece of land, as we are in the crypto space. But I like the way that you've designed that. It feels like a healthy way to involve choice, and then for there to be ramifications of choice when considering that kind of land. So are there any other elements that you would say, like when you're thinking about land, that choice comes into play?
Uh, any other elements? You mean just besides crafting, or
Yeah,
sorry.
or like the
Um,
other buildings that you might, or the other things that you
like
might
a,
do on your land.
right. Yeah, no, I definitely think we're planning on other things. I don't know that I want to go into too many other details. I with the travel system, I do have kind of plans to have there being a mount system as well, which would be tied to lands. Though we still need to finalize a lot on there. So anything I say, just always take it with a grain of salt. We may end up changing our direction, or maybe one thing doesn't happen, but then something else happens instead. So
Oh, I'm
um,
planning on our mount being a hot air balloon. We're giving free hot air balloon rides, so
Yeah,
Well,
and that
and
might be a thing too, where, if, say, for example, if there were air balloons, and this is completely hypothetical, it might be that you have the choice between like having the best, most fastest hot air balloons that are like pulled by bats or something versus uh, having more of a supply line of slower balloons, but you have, maybe 10 versus only having one or two of the fast ones. Like that degree of choice as well,
Mm.
where like quality is a choice. So you can decide to go for quantity or for quality.
Is
Um,
safety a choice on the hot air balloons? Because I think I just solved our hero population problem that we have. If we'll
people
get you there,
falling
we'll
out.
get you there fast. There is only you're
Only
parachuting out of
5% chance of
yeah,
burn.
you're parachuting out of that hot air balloon on the way there.
Well, I do have some thoughts as far as safety goes. I'll just say that much and not say more for now. But I do want lands to be very integrated into the gameplay experience
Mm-hmm.
of everybody. And they're a part of the world. They're there on the map, and the map will become a place where you're actually planning out where you want your heroes to go, what you want the heroes to do on the map, and a part of that also is, I think, safety could kind of come into that as well because we do, as of yet, the land has been very safe, but as soon as we have our combat system in place, it's going to get a lot less safe. So,
So excited. Ah. I'm brimming with excitement here. So let's stay on the land topic for a moment longer and then jump over to travel. So, can you give us any idea on how you imagine guilds potentially impacting land?
so at the moment, we're thinking that in order for like an in-game guild to exist, it needs to be tied to a land. And there may be things, some of the ideas we have with that may be like the number of members that you can have may be tied to some aspect of your land, or maybe something where it's like you need to have more than one land to have a larger guild, something like that.
I am fist
Um,
pumping right now for those
That's
of you who
awesome.
don't see me at home.
but yeah, I think the guild topic is another one that, as far as like how deep that goes at this point, I don't really have much that I can comment on.
That's fair. I think that's exciting and something that we've started to see guilds form naturally. I think people are just kind of drawn to it in this kind of archetype. Whether we're doing battles, tournaments, there's just so many places for guilds to go. PVE in the future, like team up with your guild mates to go do battle on a PVE style quest, like collaborative
Right.
questing. I know that's something that Neindorf and I are passionate about. That would be great to see in the future, which can be unlocked by guilds. And so I think it's natural that so many people are being drawn to it early on, even though we are in the infancy stages of imagining what that could be.
Yep, yeah, I'm definitely like super excited to get there. I'm not sure how long it's going to take to make it there, but once we do, I think with each new major feature that we do past this point, like lands, guilds, travel, each of those things, combat, of course, are really going to transform what the experience is like. And I think with each thing that we do, it's going to maybe turn everyone's impressions of what they can do, or how they think about the game on its head, and they have to kind of rethink everything. Be like, oh wow, okay, and it just got a lot deeper, and there's all these things I can do now. So
Yeah.
I guess that makes me wonder, you kind of led into this a little bit, but I haven't checked out the roadmap page in a while, and we've been hitting on a lot of these features. I mean, do you guys have a like if you were to lay them out like one, two, three, what are the priority one, twos, and threes, if you will?
those are some dangerous questions you got there.
You know, yeah, obviously, we're not just roughly like is PvP the your next thing you guys would love to see out, whether it's first or not. It's kind of
um, yeah, I think PvP is probably the thing I'm most excited and most like wanting to get out. And I think travel is very close behind that. It may be that just because of our resources and our pipeline, like where PvP is being developed in tandem with Wisdom Gaming, we do have like PvP doesn't require very much on the smart contract side. So things like travel and whatnot are more of a smart contract and user like front end thing to be focused on. So we do kind of work in parallel a lot whenever we can. So which of those two things comes out first is kind of up in the air. I'm not sure, but
Sure.
yeah. And then I guess for me that's kind of those two, and then land functionality is probably the next one on my list. But I think there will be probably some various smaller things that happen along the way that we do, or and it's not all up to me. So
Right.
I can say what I would want to prioritize, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what actually gets prioritized first.
And we chatted a little bit before stream too, but sometimes those pesky bugs get in your way. And as a software engineer myself, yeah, those are wildly unpredictable. It could be a 2 minute fix or it could be a 2 week fix. So I understand that entirely.
Right. And sometimes we can get like very far along in our development and realize that there's a huge exploit with the method we're using, and we have to like rethink the whole thing or something like
Hmm.
that too. So
Not just
yeah, it's kind
bugs, yeah, exploits too. That's
With
yeah.
blockchain, yeah, that's a great point.
right. Yeah, I spend a very long amount of my time just thinking about exploits, like the power up system. If like the documentation is, I typically do the documentation me, or I also have Dr. Zipper helping me as well, to like do the planning and documentation for the rest of the team to like implement. And I'd say like for power ups, for example, that one was probably like 70% exploit prevention methods and like
Wow.
30% just general functionality. So like there was a lot of thought that just kind of went into it. It's like, okay, every single possible angle, and I'm not even sure still if that like I captured everything, but I think I did. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that because then well, everyone have confidence. We we put a lot of effort into making sure it was safe and secure, and I think at this point there's just maybe a few inconveniences that we could make less inconvenient.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you're
So
never, no one's ever 100% sure. So
right.
we're not gonna, you know, it's impossible to be perfect. Let me phrase it that way.
All right. Well, I have a pitch here for a shameless pitch. One idea that's my idea and one idea that's a guildmate's idea, um, for land quests. And maybe these will give you some ideas on what we could see incorporated, and you can kind of nod your head or tell me I'm crazy. Either way. So, one idea is create a clearing the land quest, and you could use like the mining functionality where miners are able to clear the land. It could be like a boosted experience collaborative land quest that, in my mind, and I'm an engineer by trade, but not a software engineer by trade, so industrial. So I imagine a lot of things could happen with no barriers, which is my what I'm good at and my fault.
You're
Uh,
hilarious, by the
yes,
way.
yeah. So like a clearing the land quest, like could you leverage kind of like some of the same mechanics that were in the background for Perilous Journey? Not the death, but the putting heroes onto a boat concept of like a whole bunch of people could collaborate in that way. Like could you have people go out on collaborative mining quests that take like a week long to clear the land, and then whoever goes on the quest gets like some kind of like 2 XP on the boost of the land. And one idea I thought, because I think that you said this too, is like you want to make the game accessible to all, is you could kind of create the castle itself, the city center, as a guild. Like they are the Empire Guild, and then like each of the little lands are like the fiefdoms that are also guilds. And so if people want to run the game solo, they could be part of the core team guild or the Empire Guild that's at the town center, and they could do similar like quests. So it doesn't isolate people who don't want the guild experience, but could still create some collaboration for those who do want it. That idea trying to be like something that like could that be leverage existing functionality for something that we could get maybe sooner than later.
So yeah, I actually have had a few thoughts that are kind of along those lines, with what things we can do to utilize a large amount of heroes to assist in the development of the land. So something like example of like clearing the land, I think is within the realm of possibilities. There could also be, where you use miners as an example. I think that we could have similar parallels for like foragers and
Hmm.
fishers and gardeners as well. And I guess I'll say I'm thinking along those lines already. But yeah,
Love that.
like I said, it's still a bit further out. So what that actually ends up becoming is
Yeah.
difficult to
So a way
promise.
more complicated idea that our guild would love to see is a beauty shop on the land where you can permanently modify the visual traits of your heroes based on the quality of building that you've invested in on that piece of land. So if you got like a level 100 beauty shop, you can permanently change like a single Gen 0 attribute. But if you have like a level 5 beauty shop on your land, you can just change like a generation 5 hero's visual trait, or a rare and below. There's some ways that you could kind of incentivize people to go for those higher building upgrades. But there's a large collective of folks out there that after Neindorf implemented the visuals patch for the ADFK site, have just gone crazy. So yeah, there's a lot of people that really love the visual genetics.
Oh, nice. Yeah. When it comes to changing genes, I get pretty nervous about like promising anything. We've had our it wasn't visual genes, but there was like the tainted gene issue
Right.
that was on around for too long. But we did eventually address that, and I'm glad that's over with. But in general, I the gene system is intended to create rarity as far as like with certain appearances and certain combinations of appearances, colors, and everything else. Uh,
That's fair.
I'm afraid to do anything there where it's like that cheapens that that accomplishment of actually getting the right combination that you're going for. So while certainly within the realm of possibility to do, I don't know that that's something that I would be prioritizing or advocating for.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, so let's transition from land to travel, because travel is like the interconnecting the web of how you get to the land. So let's start with a kind of an easy question. I'll lob the softball out there. What is travel, and why are we going there? Is it to get to lands, to events? Why are we going to travel? We saw Dreamer present a video out at Barcelona of like moving like risk pieces on a map. Like, tell us more about travel.
Yeah, so right now, what players can do are the different profession quests and the training quests, and it's all located right in the center of the map, just all those different zones. Um, the goal with travel is to move the higher level content and the combat content to specific regions on the map, or could be random regions as well. And making it so like right now you can do level 10 profession quests just because that we don't have travel. But I'll just mention that I do intend for those level 10s to not be there once travel is a thing, that those would be moved out into different regions, and you'd have to have your heroes go travel out to do them. So like access to different content is going to require that your heroes are traveling out there. And in doing that as well, we can have various content being in different regions. So you might not be able to make it to where there's like say there's a tournament going on in like the top left corner of the map. If you happen to have heroes that are nearby and the entry period's like you have like an hour, you can make it potentially, then or you already actually are there, then you can participate, whereas others cannot because they're on the other side of the map with their heroes. Kind of creating this situation where the player, when they come in and look at the game, they can kind of see if there's any special events going on, see if that's something that they want to participate in, if they can. Maybe in order to get there, they're going to have to use a mount just because it's going to take too long to go there on foot. And then there's like a time limit on it kind of thing. And there would also be content that might not be very time limited and that they can be like, okay, I see that that's happening. I'm going to send my guys out there. And also kind of having also content that's level focused. So when PvE is out, you would be maybe going to the top right corner for fighting enemies that are between like levels 16 and 20, which is a pretty common thing I think in games like in most RPGs really. Is things get harder as you get farther away from the place where you start, and then you have access to different resources and whatnot there as well. So I mean, still trying to achieve the same general goal as you see in other games, as is having that available. So I'm not sure, did that answer your question exactly? I guess what is travel? So that's kind of what it is.
I love it. I love it. I know we've been wanting travel forever. So that's so exciting. And I like, again, we're incorporating this idea, this concept of choice, and with choice there also becomes like an opportunity cost. And so it's like I now have to change the way of the actions that I'm taking. And tying a little bit to the last episode, and I know you're not saying like and we are bot users ourselves, and I think bots could have a place in the game, but I think there's also a lovely place in the game for that human element choice, that you have to make that decision on where you can go. That's something that you can't bot, which I think can also make the game a little more accessible for newer users or those that don't have access to kind of automated questing.
Right. Yeah. I imagine once travel's out, I'm sure those that have bots will probably be looking to implement some form of analysis of the chain and how things are set up. And
there's always a battle of
heroes.
escalation. Yeah.
Right. I'm sure that will happen, but yeah, you're right. I think for your average player who may not be heavily invested with hundreds of heroes, they for them, if they only have say like 10 heroes or something, they will have to make some pretty meaningful choices, I think, as to where they want to go, what they want to focus on, and what kind of content they're trying to consume. And I think it'll scale up from there for people with many heroes. They can likely have different groups going out to different regions of the map, and maybe can have access to more content because they have more heroes. And I think that also, assuming we make it very fun and compelling, I think that would also give people more reason to be like, okay, I think I might summon a couple more heroes so that I can have a little bit more access to things, have kind of hubs where my heroes are at, so that I have access to more quests that pop up, because I do plan for there to definitely be kind of limited time things that happen, and those will likely be the places where I guess you can get the best loot, or the access to like things like tournaments as well, having kind of
that's awesome,
entry periods and whatnot. So yeah.
So one thing that was brought up on the last podcast, and kind of an intersection between the dilemma of the hero population and travel. It sounded like KP brought this up, and Brown Gent brought this up a little bit in Twitter of, right now the main thing that heroes, Gen Zeros that is, can focus on is summoning, and there's not a lot of other concepts that are fun for them to do currently. And right now that, summoning is the exciting thing. And then Christian Peter kind of said it in a way that resonated with me, and this idea that I've been having, and that it's, it's a bit of like, it's a matter of, well, what can your heroes do, and can they do something else? And when they were locked away for the perilous journey, obviously the hero growth population declined quite a bit. So if we can gain access to certain things while traveling, can we lose access to things while traveling? I'm thinking the portal itself. If there's an incentive for your Gen Zeros to be on the corner of the map, and you can now no longer access the portal, like that might solve the hero population dilemma right there. And now it goes back to the roles of the game that I want to play, Neindorf. It's like, do I want to be a summoner? Um, do we want to be hanging out and making new heroes, or do we want to be out there questing and I don't know, like I could imagine, just like with the Perilous Journey, that a Gen Zero in a region could boost your guilds or your own chances of whatever it is. Finding a rare item on a PvP or PvE quest.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I think he was directing that towards you, so sorry for jumping in. You
No
can go ahead.
worries. I guess, yeah, for me, it's kind of I'm trying to collect my thoughts here. I'll let you go. I'm now I got kind of lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
So yeah, for the central region of the map is a region. So for your heroes to be able to summon, you do need to be. I do plan for that to be a thing to an extent. There may be ways that we build in that allows it to not be too restrictive, but in general, though, I think if you wanted to level up, for example, you would need to like make the journey to the meditation circle to actually do that. And similarly for the portal. Yeah, I guess you kind of had hit the nail on the head there with that thought where it may, especially if we did do things where having Gen Zeros and like located within lands and doing other things, providing benefits that maybe other gens are not able to provide. That could be another thing where you just kind of pause that Gen Zero from producing heroes. That may help. I mean, yeah, as far as like that topic of summoning cooldowns and whatnot, I still kind of hold the same views that I had in that last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it could. I think it'll become a question for the owners of those Gen Zeros, like what's more valuable to them, and what that's something I'm not sure that we can just. I doubt that all Gen Zero holders would all go and stop summoning with them, regardless of what we did.
Yeah. Well, I like, I'll be honest. I was on the fence with the kind of the summoning cooldown change. Hearing more of the last podcast that helped me kind of, I would say, fully get there. And I was definitely erring on the side of, yeah, a small increase in cooldowns would be good. It'll obviously, I think it will also balance out in the end in terms of the value of the Gen 1s it produces. But there's not a lot else you can do with the heroes at this time. So I like the way that a solution like this solves the problem, because it's not like taking away. It's like solving it through an abundance mindset versus kind of that scarcity mindset, where it's like now our Gen Zeros can do more things, and now it's a player choice, and it's like, well, you don't have to go send them to the edge of the map to boost your tournament power, your fishing quests, or whatever it is. You can leave them there to summon, but that's a player choice. And depending on the time, you could also you could kind of tweak those power-ups that are external to the summoning as you kind of see fit as like the game goes along, and that would be changing a new feature instead of changing an existing feature, which is a lot harder from kind of a mindset shift standpoint, and people have bought these assets already. So I just like I like the way that could solve the challenge.
Right. Yeah. I mean, assuming nothing were to change with the cooldowns, I think that it kind of just puts the onus on us as developers to come up with different solutions that will help, keep things in balance. And we'll definitely make our best effort with that. If that never ends up changing, that'll be just the environment that we're working within. So of course we'll try to come up with the best solutions we can. But yeah, I think I still kind of hold the same views. I think it's gonna be tough to like fully incentivize everybody to to not summon, and I don't know that we should incentivize people to not summon, really. So yeah.
I think it comes kind of full circle to what we were talking about earlier. If everybody's going to play their game, the more games, if you will, within the game that you as developers provide, the more we as players will distribute our focus. And summoning has just, for the last year and a half or whatever it's been, I don't even remember. That's just been the primary game. And so that's
Right.
what we're playing. That's what, people have podcasted about. That's what we've built tools around. Um,
Right.
and and I think as more games are developed, we will split our focus. And I can see myself with the limited time that I have, IRL job and everything. I can see myself not doing as much summoning because it takes time to locate quality pairs. I mean,
Right.
it's an effort. So I think that'll help significantly.
Yeah, and you guys might be right about that, and I think we will probably see how that plays out as that goes on. So, um, yeah, I mean, we'll be constantly monitoring the situation as we get new content out, and if it does seem like things have kind of leveled off, then I think that would be great. So, and if not, then we'll probably be thinking of other ways that we can be, either burning heroes or occupying people's heroes away from summoning in other ways too. So, yeah, I think you have a good point there.
Do you have like a oh crap barometer where what's the stat that you're like, uh-oh, like this is not good now. We have to meet and come up with some change.
Um, I
Is it something
think,
like block space or something simple like that?
yeah, that's probably the thing I'm most concerned about is just our infrastructure with DFK chain and Clayton. How much, like, there is an upper limit to how much processing could happen on either chain. We're not there now, but we do see like the gas cost go up when there's like peak transactions happening and whatnot. So, of course, if there's more heroes and they're all questing and all doing these different things, then it is going to be more of a load on that. But fortunately, with some of the content coming out in the future, like traveling isn't going to be that much of a like load on the blockchain to kind of initiate and complete. So that will kind of take away from the more like process heavy quest rewarding transactions, and also our combat system is mostly off chain as well. So there's only just kind of the submit and then the retrieve aspects that are on chain, and those should be less impactful as well. So also, I guess just with the type of content that we have coming in the future, I think that could help as people are just doing different things that don't necessarily require as much processing.
And if you're
So
using
yeah.
stamina and or real life time, it's a bit of a double win because it's taking less processing to do that action to consume that time or stamina, and then you're also pulling that hero away from doing the more intense transaction as well. So I hope, I'm hopeful, I guess optimistic, but I haven't done the numbers you have.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I am hopeful that that'll help. And if it does get to a point where it's getting, like, oh crap, button or light goes off, then we'll
The bat signal.
yeah. we'll be coming up with other solutions or ways that we can solve for it. It's not like there's no, like, once that happens, it's over. I don't think that's the case. There's options for like sharding and having a second subnet that's specific for questing or things like that. But if we do have to do something like that, that's a good chunk of work that we'd be focused on for a
Mm-hmm.
while. So
That's true. You guys do seem to have a pretty high ability to innovate within this space to solve your problems. I think we as a community need to allow you time to do that when those needs come up. Because I mean, I think it kind of, yeah, some of that multi-chain content kind of saved your bacon a little bit, if you know what I mean.
yeah, definitely. And we still have plans for a couple more expansions at some point. Hopefully for me, I hope that's going to be a bit further out. But if it gets to a point where it's like, okay, we have the option of either like creating a whole new subnet for splitting up our transactions or like expanding, that it's going to be a real conversation that we have as far as which is the better path to go, just to kind of get people spread out. And like even now, I think, with I mentioned it in the last podcast as well, like with Clayton, there's still a few things that we're working towards that I think will make questing over there more attractive. The main thing is just their gas rebate program that they I think is currently paused, if I understand correctly. But we also have things that we need to implement on our end to even be able to utilize that program. And as far as I understand, that they're very much planning on reinstating that. There's just a few things that have happened in the last few months or so that have kind of made them have to prioritize other things for the moment. But once we get there and get that, I think we can also see we'll likely see a lot more heroes move over to Sarandale and being questing over there.
I don't know, Raph. It sounds like he's not going to tell us what the class that mixes with the Dread Knight is here tonight.
I was holding out
so.
for that.
Dang it.
That's my last question. Okay, so I saw Bolon and Eric's here talking about it in YouTube chat, so I gotta go there. The PJ Survivor tournaments are almost as infamous as the amulets at this point. Will they come out both at the same time? You gotta have an amulet and a PJ Survivor. I'm just teasing. It's got to be exciting for some of these aspects to be coming to fruition, and I'm sure that's kind of in conjunction with the plans of having land and PV. You kind of have to have land and combat to do the land tournaments, right?
Right. Yeah. What was with the PJ land tournaments, that was for the lands that exist now on the map. So
Okay.
as far as like the lands existing, I think we have those. It's more a matter of having the tournament system in place, and then doing it. But yeah, it's definitely not anything we've forgotten about or anything like that. It's just a matter of getting there. The tournament system and the amulets also have both been topics of a lot of discussions recently for us. So not that's maybe people are going to be just winning the crap out of both of those things, which that happens. But it is something that we are getting more and more able to focus on. So I do want us to get there. I think I'm really excited for us to be able to start doing tournaments. I think that'll be probably a very exciting thing for our players to want to participate in, and it'll kind of really give people a chance to be champions, and that's something we haven't really had in the game to any like real extent thus far, I guess, besides duels. But this would be taking it to a whole new level.
So, let's transition to crafting some more. We talked about that a little bit at the top of the podcast. When crafting, we talked about making items or parts, subsets of items that eventually become equipment. Do you do crafting for other purposes as well? Like, are you making runes or stones or buildings? Like, what else do you imagine crafting impacting the ecosystem in other ways beyond just the things that you're equipping to your hero?
So I think alchemy is probably the one I'll point to as like alchemy is going to be contributing more on, I guess, the consumable front versus the equipment front, though I think alchemy will also be kind of producing at least intermediate items that would be used for equipment. And there may be a few things where they actually themselves do craft, something maybe most likely like magic items and whatnot. So yeah, consumables I think are also on the table for, and that'd be potions and any other future consumables we might come up with. And then just like we kind of that example of like clearing the land, I think we can do similar things in terms of like when it comes to building a building, you might want to have collection of craftsmen
Ah,
working
right.
on it, something like that too. So
I love
I
that.
think there's a lot of different angles we can go with that sort of thing.
And that way you don't necessarily have to add another token into the game. You can utilize some of the existing functionality that's there.
Right.
So it now it's starting to feel like we're getting close to a real game loop, and that's something that I think you've talked about this a couple times on an AMA. Can you describe kind of your idea of what a game loop looks like? I'm kind of a visual person. I have to map this out, and I've drawn like two kind of uh, circles where there's a hero game loop where you're when you're trying to summon the more advanced classes, you can buy your heroes and then you can summon them, which is kind of building them up, and you're working towards those advanced classes. Right now with items, we have a bit of a game loop, albeit a small one, but we're trying to find items out in the world, and then we're trying to build potions, and then we're trying to build the first level of stones. What do you and then eventually these game loops will feed combat system and the questing system, because now we want to send our heroes out with stronger gear, with stronger items, so they can bring back more items that then feed that game loop again. So what do you see as the game loop? I'm kind of curious to let you cook with that idea.
Um, so I think what you described is pretty close to what I see as kind of a typical game loop. I think when we say game loop, that's just saying, okay, what do you as a player do when you come into DFK? Like what is your goal for the day? And like it could be, oh, I'm going to go craft some things, get my guys all equipped, and then I want to go do that dungeon over there. Once I've done that dungeon, I've collected these resources. I want to maybe they're not that useful to me, other than just maybe one thing, and the rest I think I'm going to go back to the market and I'm going to either sell those, or I can use this to craft. Like having a kind of point A to point B to point C of what you're going to do, um, and like what options are available to players is, I guess, what we mean by what I mean when I'm talking about gameplay loops. So um, yeah, I think really even just saying a gameplay loop is maybe a bit misleading, because as we've already discussed in this talk, there's quite a few different things that people could do.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe each person's game loop is going to be different, where some people will just be focused on gathering, and that's what they like to do. But other people will be like, okay, I'm going to go travel out there. I'm going to do this tournament. After that, I'm going to get out to that dungeon, but I got pretty injured along the way, and now I need to heal up. And and then I have my summon up, so I'm going to summon as well. And you just kind of have all these different options of what you're going to do, and each player kind of creates their own path of how they're managing their resources, managing their heroes, and working towards improving, I guess, their standing in one way or another, whether it's hero level or in ranking in tournaments or in PvP, or improving their crafting by going and collecting some rare ingredients that they need to make some popular weapon or some popular piece of equipment that people have in demand.
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of creating, like right now, all you can do is just the different profession and training quests and summon and duels. Like those are the few things that you can do. So it's a pretty small loop, I guess, as far as like what you can do, and not everyone participates in all those content. So for some people, it's like almost just I do one thing and that's it kind of thing. So kind of breaking it into a point where people are doing A, B, C, D, and E things in their kind of general, when they log in to do things, they have their own little plans that they're creating. So I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of
Yeah. Where do you see the loop of, and maybe loop's not the right word, where do you see kind of stones going in the future? Because that's one that I find, when a lot of suggestions for solving the hero population have been burn a hero, get a stone. And to me, I want to be a little cautious of, are you just creating inflation of a different kind.
Right.
With your heroes, we're trading hero quantity inflation for hero power creep inflation. And so,
Right.
how do you think about kind of like those items that specifically like boost a hero significantly, permanently for the rest of their life? Um, yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I am also kind of cautious when I, hear those kind of ideas. I think the the greater stones were meant to be rare for a reason, to kind of keep there being a balance between the standard hero and these enhanced heroes. And so I think for like the next tier of stones, like going from lesser to regular and then from regular to greater, like if there's right now the only path to get those is pretty much from the raffles, or any, if there's any like prize going on, like the Tilt Proof Tuesday sometimes have some of those things as rewards. Um, I want to make sure that anything that we do that is like in game, like an upgrade path from one type of stone to the next, is sufficiently challenging to do. That captures the rarity uh, of them that kind of exist now, and requiring a good amount of resources to be able to do something like that. So, because yeah, I think you're right. Like if it was just you can sacrifice a hero and get a greater enhancement stone, I think what we just see is a very rapid shift to most heroes having greater enhancement stones, and heroes are summoned just to uh, be sacrificed to a stone to then summon another hero that is now enhanced. And that I think we need to be really careful with that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to make sure that we're at least
You're just trading one power creep for another. It's
right. But yeah, I mean, if it's like, oh, you need to get these things, and yeah, maybe you need an item that you can only get, or it's one of the ways to get it is burning this hero, and then you need a bunch of other things as well that are like resources from questing or whatnot, and combine it all together, and then now you've been able to upgrade from like a lesser stone to a regular. I think there could be a balancing there as well, where it then plays against not just one part of the economy, but like multiple parts, where hero effort comes in,
mm-hmm.
where all the resources that come from questing, or some of them might come into play, and so it's more of a, with X amount of effort and X amount of resources, then you can take this next step, rather than just a quick and easy and easy to exploit, uh, you know, explode a hero and now you got a new stone kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's also, with the lesser stones, kind of a conundrum. I'd love to see those be one of the many components that goes into like the then regular size stones, because otherwise like lesser stones will quickly become entirely, well, not entirely irrelevant, but close to irrelevant. And so that would be a nice way to boost the value of the lesser stones and then all the items that feed into it. Like it kind of keeps a nice linearity to the path. Not that everything has to be kind of sequential like that, but it would kind of complement the value of the things that precede it.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense, especially for things like the stones and the
Yeah,
crystals. So,
yeah.
yep.
So I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time here. The last major topic that I had was a conversation on power ups.
Okay.
What are you know if the kind of thing I had written down here is, if tokenomics and game design had a baby, they would call it power ups. And so I really, it was quite clever. All kudos to you guys for coming up with a way during the drastic kind of reshuffling of, moving the realms and then reimagining how the power tokens would work, and then like having a locking mechanism. So I think it's really well done. How do Web3 games like leverage this concept? And then like, can you tell us some of the ideas that you're thinking of for future power ups? that might be a maybe out there.
Um, yeah, I think I also am very proud of our power up system. I think it kind of solved a lot of problems that we were facing when we were talking about the splitting and the migration and everything else that happened last year. And it does kind of help when you have uh, an economy like ours where the I guess the resources that go into supporting development are tied to in-game behavior and whatnot, and like having some degree with our players and with investors and whatnot, they are looking at different ways that they can benefit by contributing to the economy, and I think power-ups are a good way to do that. And I think other Web3 games could look at that model and come up with their own version of it as well. And like as far as like what we could do moving forward, I think there's a lot of different gameplay aspects that could come into play. Like we already saw, there's a power up for like improving your stamina recovery rate, power up for improving your experience gains. There could be power ups to improve crafting, power ups for uh, perhaps for travel, for different things. There may even be like some dungeons that require you have like a special access power up to even be able to do that dungeon, for example. Like I think there's a lot of different ways that we can use power ups to enhance the gameplay experience, or also kind of give people exclusivity to an extent. And there's some other ideas that we've been discussing as far as like uh, hmm, maybe I shouldn't talk too much more about
Oh,
that
we
actually,
almost had him,
but
Nindorf.
almost. But yeah, I mean we have other ideas, I guess, and we're always open to more. Anyone having suggestions, like feel free to definitely shoot them our way if you want, and we'll consider them. Um,
I thought you were going to finally make the reveal that the other side of the pyramid is the Dread Mage that summons with the Dread Knight.
Yes, you need the power up, and then you can get the Dread Mage.
Yes. All right. There it is.
Right. But yeah, so I think that's probably all I can say on that on
That's
power
fair.
ups. I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, that's my really lengthy list of questions here. Nindorf, what else do you have that you want to go over?
Um, I I think I just want to, give a cool shout out too to the new hero art that's kind of coming out and those animations. Those
Yes.
really cool, by
Mm-hmm.
the way.
Thank you. Yeah, Second Best Dad has been killing it with those. I probably given him a little bit of a headache sometimes because I tend to have a lot of comments and stuff as well. And he knows what he's doing, and I'm just here kind of getting in his way sometimes. But I think this whole process of getting to the new art and the new animation system has been really important. Something we've needed for a long time. When the project started, there were only a few people on the team, and not every skill set was available. So people were doing what they could with the skill set that they had. And while we did definitely have like functional heroes with functional animations, it wasn't really set up in a way that was conducive to doing it efficiently. Whereas this new system is set up so that we can kind of hammer out new animations fairly quickly and do a lot more with it than what we could with the old system. So it's going to be a very good functional upgrade for just what we can do within the game environment, beyond just looking really good as well.
That's a good theme, I think, that, from our talk here tonight. It sounds like you guys have had to make a lot of inroads in investing in your product so that you can continue to make the product, bigger, bolder, roadmap complete. So, I mean, are there I'm not going to call it, maybe that's a bad term, but it's not necessarily technical debt, but what is there another thing or anything like that on your guys' list that you're like, oh, we want to do this so that we can also be accelerated in the future?
Um,
Because these are good examples where if it's going to catapult you guys into faster development, like we as a community absolutely love it.
right. I think that was a big one. Just I think also like getting to the point where we have travel developed, where we have PvE and PvP developed, or we get to the point where we're just iterating on what we need to do, like in terms of like we need to make new monsters, we need to make new equipment, um, we need to like make content for levels 20 through 30. Like that becomes, I think, a much more straightforward thing than like designing entirely new systems. Um, so I think once we get to that point as well, we can really start to just add meat to the bone. We're still building the skeleton at this point, but once we're adding that meat, I think is when it's going to get really really fun, really exciting for everybody, and where our process can be a little bit more streamlined. So it's not really technical debt. It's just I guess the mode that we're in right now versus the mode that we'll be in the future. I think we'll be tugging along much better once we get to that point.
Bolon
Way
saying
cool.
also adding NFT equipment and joint NFT bridging. Yeah,
Yes.
those are huge too.
Yeah, that was a very huge thing. And also our flag storage bridging as well. That was something that doesn't really sound that exciting to people, but like being able to keep like hero
Data,
information
yeah.
that's tied to the hero, like going with the hero across chain, and now you can dark summon in Crystal Vale, then go to Serendil and level them up if they were like dark summoned with higher level heroes, and that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg as far as like now we can really kind of have cross chain content that's like
Right.
truly cross chain and truly being tracked across like as you're moving your heroes and your assets around.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for the time and energy that one goes into the game that's being developed. We are Nightdorf and I are DeFi Kingdoms maxis at heart. So we love this, and obviously a huge thank you for spending your night tonight talking about things on the pod. So much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for the invite, and look forward to the next time.
Yeah. All right. Well, keep up the great work. And I know we've been running long, so thank you for all of our viewers who have stuck with us tonight. Appreciate it. Love you guys. And, to kind of the whole Kingdom Studios team, we're glad that you're building in the bear. I mean, that's not a better place to be.
Thank you. Yep. Thanks again also to the audience, everyone that was listening to this or that listens to it if it's a recording. Appreciate you listening, and hope you're as excited as I am for the future of the project. So
Yep.
have a good night, everybody.
All right. Good night. All right.